So after the experience that was the Toho saga of Kong, the future of the franchise quickly became uncertain. The big question was who was to own the rights to Kong. As RKO were no longer around, the rights for the franchise were up in the air, and every major film company you could think of went for the grabbing, from everything from Universal to Fox to Warner Brothers. To cut a long story short, and I mean a really long story, I mean you could fit this into 3 books and then adapt it into 4 films. I say 4 films because the last book will be adapted into 2 parts because, you know, we like money. The rights for the franchise were eventually obtained by Paramount and Dino De Laurentiis and Universal. Yes, 2 production companies controlled the rights to Kong at the same time. In a different world, we could have had 2 Kong films around the same time. Universal originally wanted to make a more faithful remake of the 1933 classic, something that would later come to fruition under the guise of Peter Jackson, by the title of The Legend of King Kong. However, they backed out from the race when Paramount rolled into production with this version. So have you ever heard of the phrase reimagining? The phrase that a majority of has-been directors use today to make an excuse for remaking a classic film, but in actuality they're trying to fix something that was never broken and end up harming the franchise in the process. Well, this film is the true definition of a reimagining. Yes, the film follows the same basic 3-act structure, with a ship travelling to an island, encountering natives, their lady is kidnapped and sacrificed to a god they worship in the form of a gorilla named Kong. He falls in love, is captured, brought back to New York, escapes and is shot down and killed. But it's the meat of the story that's changed just enough to make it original. For example, instead of a film company travelling to shoot an exotic island, it's an oil firm travelling to discover a gold mine of said material. Names are changed around a bit, but the characteristics are kinda still there. Fred Wilson is essentially a reinterpreted Carl Denham, just more cold and shallow with little redeeming values, caring solely about profits and little to nothing about his crew. Jessica Lange in her feature film debut plays the Ann Darrow character, now renamed Dwan. Instead of being an aspiring actress, she's a model who was shipwrecked and left afloat after her ship sank due to the crew watching porn.
And so kids, the lesson of the story is, when you watch porn on a ship, bring your rubbers.
It might just save your life.
I personally find her character to be much more interesting than that of Darrow's. Not to shit on Ray's performance in the original or anything, but Dwan does more than just scream and faint. She fights back, she talks to the gorilla. This was the first American interpretation of the mutual caring between the beauty and the beast, and it truly adds to the weight of the climactic scene. Then of course there's the dude himself, Jeff Bridges, who plays a character called Jack Prescott, no longer a first mate but a photographer who believes in the flower, my golden child. On a serious note though, Bridges is fine. Yeah, he's fine. Being one of his earlier films, he hadn't truly grasped the powerhouse presence that he's known for today.
Looks like a fucking loser.
Hey, at least I'm housebroken.
His motivations are clear and he's likeable, but aside from wanting to rescue Dwan and getting her pants, he just really treads over the same ground. It doesn't really progress as a character throughout the duration of the film. But once again, the best character in the film is Kong, played by Rick Baker. This brings me into the special effects of the film, and mother of God, look at this. This film is over 40 years old, and look at this animatronic work. Look at these sets, look at look at Kong. It looks jaw-dropping. It's the best looking Kong to this day, without a doubt. It's truly astonishing to see Kong's face go to work. In the past, separate models were used for Kong to convey different emotions. However, Kong can go from sad to angry to happy, all within one shot. Majority of the practical effects were done by the legendary Carlo Rambaldi. For the close-up shots, hydraulic gorilla arms were built, which were 6 feet in length and weighed about 1,650 pounds each. Here's a funny story. When Laurentiis went to see the hydraulic arms work for the first time, they malfunctioned and one of the arms happened to be stuck giving the middle finger for a whole week. The legacy of Ape lives on. The most famous and, well, rather infamous practical effect was the largest ever animatronic sculpture ever created, and still is, of Kong. It was heavily featured in promotion for the film, making the film very impressive to the audiences. It towered over 40 feet and had a 3.5 ton aluminium frame covered with rubber and 1,012 pounds of Argentinian horsetails. It was controlled by 20 operators and cost $1.7 million. It appears in the film for less than a second. Yeah, kinda disappointing after all the build-up. Initially this animatronic was supposed to be used for a majority of the film, but due to technical difficulties they opted for the suit. The score of the film actually is genuinely brilliant. Composed by 007 veteran John Barry, it has a haunting feel to it in the sense that it effortlessly jumps between genres from adventure to romance to horror like a breeze. However, like every film, there are some downsides. The island itself, despite looking great for starters, it's an actual island, it feels quite empty. There are no dinosaurs here. The only creature Kong fights is a snake, which is quite graphic actually. Come to think of it, the whole film is quite gory. Like, holy god, look at Kong during the finale. Oh my god. Back to the island. It has a great design but is shallow on the inside. The island doesn't really have a fear-inducing, malevolent presence like the original. And it can drag it sometimes, particularly in the romance scenes. The romance in this, while not horrible, it's not as sudden in the original, for example, but it lacks the charm of the original. That goes for the whole film, really. It really feels like it doesn't have the magical element that made the original so amazing. Does that make it bad? Well, if you go to IMDb, you'll find that this film has a mere 5.8 on the score. That's lower than X-Men Origins, Suicide Squad, Godzilla 2014 and Resident Evil. This film should have twice as many in the rank of score. This is an excellent film by any definition of the word. It's in my top 10 most underrated films of all time. It deserves so much more appreciation and acclaim aside from being referred to as that other Kong film. It's more than that. It's the most original film in the franchise after the original, if that makes any sense. And it's one of the best monster films ever made. The king may be dead, but this film's legacy must live on. Long live Kong.
Vagina.